You know, if I could sit down with you now, with the you I was at 25 or 30 or even 40, I'm not sure you'd listen to me. And that's all right. I'm not sure I would have listened either. But I'd like to try anyway, because there are some things I've learned about God that I wish I'd known sooner. Not to save myself pain exactly. The pain taught me things. But maybe to save myself from some of the fear, from some of the exhausting effort of it all. You think you have God figured out, and I remember that feeling. You have your system, don't you? Your understanding of how it all works. Do this and God will bless you. Pray harder and the doors will open. Have enough faith and the mountain will move. It's all so transactional in your mind, like a spiritual algebra problem. Put in the right variables, get the right answer. And when it doesn't work that way, and it won't, not nearly as often as you think, you'll assume you've done something wrong. Not enough faith, not enough prayer, some hidden sin you haven't rooted out yet. I want to tell you something about that, but let me start somewhere else first. Let me tell you about success. You're so hungry for it right now. You want to build something, to become someone, to prove something. And you've dressed it up in spiritual language, haven't you? It's not ambition, it's God's calling. But here's what you don't see yet. You've made success into a sign of God's favor, and failure, or even just ordinariness, into a sign of His absence. I've watched the sun rise through my kitchen window almost every morning for 15 years, and I've learned something from those mornings. God is in the ordinary. He's not just in the big moments, the victories, the breakthroughs. He's in the quiet morning, in the coffee cup warming your hands, in the texture of a day that looks like every other day. You're going to spend so much energy trying to make extraordinary things happen, and decades from now, you'll realize that the moments you remember most fondly were never the big victories. The conversation with your daughter on the way to school, the afternoon helping your neighbor, the night you sat in the dark and felt for just a moment that you weren't alone. Those moments don't make good testimony stories, but they're where God was. And you missed so many of them because you were looking past them. Here's something else about success. It won't protect you. Everything you build can be taken away, not as punishment, just as the nature of things. And when those things happen, and they will, you'll discover something terrifying and beautiful at the same time. God was never impressed by any of it in the first place. I lost something once that I thought was my entire identity, everything I'd worked for, gone. And in those first few months, I was angry at circumstances, at people, at myself, and yes, at God. But then, slowly, something shifted. In the emptiness where my achievements had been, I found something else. It was God, but not the God I'd been serving. This God wasn't keeping score, wasn't withholding blessings, wasn't disappointed in my failure. This God was just there. And for the first time in my life, I felt like I could breathe. You think you need to be in control. You've got your plans, your strategies, and you pray, of course, but your prayers are mostly about asking God to bless your plans. You say, "Thy will be done," but what you mean is, "Please let your will match mine." Control feels like faithfulness, but it's exhausting, isn't it? Here's what time has taught me. You were never in control to begin with. You're not the author of your story. You're a character in a much larger narrative. Surrendering control doesn't mean being passive, but it means you hold your plans loosely. And when you finally let go, when you stop trying to force everything, you'll find that you actually see more clearly. You'll be present for the life you're actually living, instead of the life you're trying to create. You think faith means certainty. You think it means having all the answers. You're so sure of your theology. But I've learned that faith is less like holding a stone and more like following a whisper. It's about trusting the guide, even when the path ahead is foggy. I don't have all the answers anymore. I've actually accumulated more questions, and I've met God in those questions more than I ever did in my certainties. When you acknowledge what you don't know, when you sit with the mystery, something opens up, space for God to be bigger than your categories. Some of your theology will change, and that's okay. God is patient with your understanding. Let me tell you about loss. You'll lose people you love. That's the hardest part of living long. And all your neat theology about God's goodness will feel insufficient. But here's what I found in those dark places. God grieves with you, not from a distance. He's in it with you, weeping, aching. You think God's love is something you have to earn, but His love isn't like that. It's not conditional on your performance. You can't break it with your questions or your anger or your mistakes. It's steadier than you are. I wish I'd understood that God wasn't keeping a ledger, wasn't waiting for me to prove myself. He was just there, the way a parent is there for a child, not impressed by their accomplishments, not disgusted by their failures, just there. The view of God that I've arrived at now is simpler than what you carry, less systematic, less comprehensive, but it's more real, more lived in. It's a God who is fundamentally good, fundamentally loving, fundamentally with us, a God who meets us in our limitations. I pray differently now, not worse, just different, less formal, more like talking to someone who's in the room with me. Sometimes I just sit in silence. Sometimes I complain. Sometimes I thank Him for small things. You're going to make mistakes. You'll hurt people without meaning to. You'll choose the wrong path sometimes. And I'm not going to tell you that it all works out for the best, because some of it doesn't. But here's what matters. None of it disqualifies you. None of it makes God love you less. And some of your mistakes will teach you things you couldn't have learned any other way. They'll make you gentler with others. And that awareness, that humility, is worth more than a spotless record. In the end, and I'm closer to the end now, what matters isn't what you accomplished. What matters is simpler than that. Did you love? Did you let yourself be loved? Did you learn to see God in places you weren't looking for Him? I look back on my life, and there's plenty I would change if I could, but I don't carry regret the way you might think I would, because even the mistakes, even the detours, even the losses, they all brought me here, to this quieter place, this simpler faith. God has been patient with me, more patient than I ever was with myself. He walked with me through the valley, and I didn't recognize Him at the time, but He was there. He's always been there.
So here's what I want to say to you, young man. You're going to be okay. Not because you'll do everything right, but because you're held by something bigger than your effort, steadier than your faith. Chase your dreams if you want to, but hold them loosely. Love God, but don't make Him fit your boxes. Work hard, but rest without guilt. Be serious about faith, but don't lose your joy in it. And know this, you are loved right now. Not because of what you'll become or what you'll accomplish. You're loved because you're His, and nothing will ever change that. Maybe you need to walk your own path to get here. Maybe the journey itself is the point. So I'll just say this, be kind to yourself. The God you're so worried about pleasing, He's gentler with you than you are with yourself. Trust that. Rest in it. Let it change you. You're going to be all right. Better than all right. You're going to find your way home.